It would be very easy to believe that the experienced guys from the pawn shop never make any errors or bad deals. Still, not even the best are error-free. Is not every deal a good deal, as success in business doesn't necessarily mean perfection from bad decisions, in stolen items to blatant fakes. Here are 10 times the Pawn Stars were scammed badly. Number 10. In an episode named Chum's Risky Business from season 15, a woman comes in the pawn shop with boxes and boxes of old comic books. She inherited from her uncle all the comic books she doesn't know anything about. They were handed down to her, and she was looking to sell them, certain there's something valuable in the pile, judging by the prices on them. Chumlee concluded they date from the 70s or 80s, the period also known as the Bronze Age of comics. Without asking for a second opinion, Chumlee started haggling. The woman's initial asking price was $2,000. But Chumlee immediately lowered it, taking into account the time needed to go through all of them and find the diamond in the rough. He offered her $50 per box, which summed up to $350. But they eventually struck a deal at $500, with Chum saying that life is about chances, and sometimes he's just got to take them. Unfortunately, when an expert checked the comics out, it turned out that this wasn't the right chance to take, as he said that the comics would sell for about $200 if the Pawn Stars were lucky. You spend $500 on some comic books. I'll be lucky to get like $180 out of and 7 boxes of the recycled paper. Number 9. In season 8, a studio musician called Vic Flick came into the Pawn Stars to sell a 1961 Fender Stratocaster. The guitar fascinated Rick from the get-go, as he recalled his early childhood memories of watching the legendary Jimi Hendrix playing the iconic guitar. Apparently, the guitar model had some history, since Leo Fender, the inventor, came up with it in 1954, and it hasn't changed much throughout the years. Rick decided to follow his hunch and bought the guitar for $55,000. However, as Vic Flick, the owner of the guitar, is not really a legendary musician, most of the songs that had been recorded with this guitar were not exactly huge hits, apart from the James Bond theme. Naturally, the guitar just started collecting dust in the pawn shop with a price tag of $90,000. So Rick eventually decided to sell it on an auction. Much to his despair, the guitar sold for merely $20,000, leaving him with a loss of $35,000. Number 8. The gold and silver pawn shop staff has, unknown to them occasionally, taken in stolen property, like every other pawn shop. In season 7, an episode called Shekel and Hide, Rag bought a 2,000-year-old Tyrian shekel, a coin most historians believe was the mode of currency, using the infamous transaction of the 30 pieces paid to Judas to betray Christ. It's a shekel of Tyre, like from the Bible. Yeah. We only buy American coins. Myth Detective later came to the shop and informed them that the coin had been stolen, not by the seller, who was featured in the episode, but by a previous owner of the coin nevertheless. The Harrisons were allowed to keep it as the original owner had been compensated by his insurance policy. But while they get lucky there, it turned out that Rick had paid way too much for the coin. Despite its rarity, a well-preserved shekel of Tyre would usually be only worth about $1,200. And because it had been cleaned, this one had lost a lot of value, so most of the $1,600 that Rick had paid for the coin are probably lost forever. Number 7. In the season 6 episode, Say It Ain't So, Rick made another ill-fated gamble, without consulting his trustworthy experts, shelling out $13,000 on a book he believed might contain the authentic signature of baseball great Shoeless Joe Jackson. Rick couldn't have been more excited during the appraisal, saying this is absolutely incredible, and speculating that it might be the rarest sports signature, period, because Jackson was illiterate. But despite the seller's questionable certificate of authenticity and Rick's own reservations, as he admitted, of all the sports signatures in the world, this is the one most faked. He bought it anyway. After hearing from Rebecca, his book expert, that the signature was likely a fake, Rick then sent it out to another authenticator who reiterated the bad news. Not only was it a forgery, it was a laughably bad one. Number 6. In a 2012 episode called Free Willy, Corey made the blunder of forking over $31,000 for what he believed was a game-worn Willie Mays San Francisco Giants uniform from 1961. In an in-depth tracking of what happened to the uniform post-Pawn Stars, the blog Hall of Shame discovered that not only did they fail to retail it at a ridiculous asking price of $80,000, but they only ended up getting $19,200 for it at auction around 2 years later. And it gets worse. After reaching out to Dave Grobe, the senior uniform authenticator at Mears, Hall of Shame reported that the uniform was never worn in a game by Mays because it never even belonged to Mays. It was a Spalding salesman's sample with minimal value, estimated to be worth around $2,000 to $3,000. Of course, that technically means Corey didn't get as ripped off as he could have. Still, he unloaded it for just shy of $20,000. But we seriously doubt he's happy with how that deal went down. Number 5. In a 5th season episode called Corey's Big Play, Rick made the unusual mistake of buying something he was unsure of before he had it authenticated. He dropped $450 on what he believed to be a 19th century Wells Fargo strongbox, only to have his hopes of a profit shot down by expert and show regular Mark the Beard of Knowledge Hall Patton, who called the box a complete fantasy piece. Hall Patton twisted the knife a little more, saying it is one of the most faked items out there. Number 4. In one of the episodes from Season 4, he was minding the shop all alone when a man walked into the shop carrying a vintage Gibson mandolin he picked up at a yard sale. He was hoping to make some money. With Rick and Corey out of reach, it was up to Champ to appraise the item, encouraged by Reg drooling over another mandolin they had in the shop earlier. He decides to go above his purchase limit of $1,000 and seals a deal of $1,500. Even though the mandolin had the decals on the edges and the stamp of the modern script, Gibson logo was visible through one of the F-holes. It turned out that it was one of the thousands of fakes that can be found across the U.S. Unfortunately for Chumlee, who was worried about impressing Rick, he lost $1,400, since a friends and music shop owner later estimated the mandolin to be worth just $100. Number 3. In the 2nd season episode titled Helmet Head, a customer came in bringing a 1964 Austin Healey Sprite, a small British sports car designed to fit in bike sheds, which originally cost about $1,800. According to the owner, the car was generally in a very good condition and just needed some minor tuning up, even though the car wouldn't start when Rick wanted to take it for a spin. He decided to make an offer since Austin Healey's are popular collector's items in the U.S. The owner wanted to sell it for $10,000, but Rick beat him down and eventually bought it for just half that. But when Rick took the car to his friend looking for a simple fix, in order to resell it, he got bad news that it would cost him about $6,000 to fix the car. Number 2. The business instinct definitely runs in the family, but some things you have to learn the hard way, or at least Corey did. He basically grew up in the pawn shop, as he was only 9 years old when he began working and polishing knobs when he started working the night shift all by himself. 9 years later, he picked up some things from his dad, but he wasn't really that experienced and simply didn't know what to expect. Apparently, the word about a novice working at the shop got out, and Corey ended up buying not 1, but 6 fake Rolex watches in just 1 week. Even though this scam and his rookie mistake cost him $4,000, there's no doubt he has learned his lesson. Number 1. Some of the biggest scams that the older of the 2 pawn shop owners has suffered occurred back in the late 1970s and early 1980s when the so-called cubic zirconias, or CZs, first appeared in the market. These clean-cut synthetic diamonds fooled innumerable pawn shops all across America, as they would appear to be 100% real whenever tested. The old man shop suffered the loss of around $30,000 due to the fake diamonds, but he has learned his lesson. Nobody knew about them, and they tested his diamonds. Everybody in the industry bought a bunch of them, he said. Corey eventually did a DIY about CZs and how to detect the fake diamonds In what he said that the zirconia is usually appeared to be too perfect, as there are very few perfect diamonds out there. If he can find even the slightest hint of a scratch, they are most probably fake. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you're a fan of Pawn Stars, and subscribe to always stay on top of our daily uploads. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.